and welcome to this video and welcome back to my office. These days people don't seem to fix electronic devices, they just throw them out into the street. Today's project, let's have a look at that. Well, here's today's project. We have a Samsung 43 centimeter color television, flat panel, LED I think, and it won't turn on. So it is plugged into the wall, but it just it doesn't turn on. So we're going to fix it. The first thing you should check, of course, is that the remote control is actually working. A simple way to do that is to get the camera out. Let's see, I'll have to get that in the vision there. So you get your camera out like that and you point the remote control at the camera of your phone, or any camera for that matter, and you should see that it's flashing. So it's a simple way to tell if a remote control is working, just using a mobile phone or another camera, because the sensor can pick up an infrared LED, but the naked eye can't. Let's get on with it. Now, people may not find this that entertaining, but that is why I do it. This is not an instructional video on how to fix a television. If you don't know what you're doing, I suggest you leave it alone. These Samsung LED TVs have a very simple design. So you have a power supply here, you have a logic and I/O board here, there'll be like a mux or a screen controller here, and a pair of speakers, and of course you've got the controller, a little manual controller there, and it's also got the infrared receiver in it for the remote control. So very clean and simple layout for an LED TV. Given that this won't turn on at all, our problem's going to be in this section here. So let's have a closer look at that. First area you're going to look at when you're working on one of these things is the capacitors. That's these guys here. These are electrolytic capacitors, and you can see, I think, let me see if I can zoom in for you on the bottom one there, but you can see here on this electrolytic capacitor, I think, that there are a number of splits in the top of the capacitor. As these capacitors get older and they dry out, they tend to split, right? So they put a spot for them to break, so that they don't do more damage, like what we're going to see in just a second. And by doing that, they're easy to identify. Generally, as these caps dry out, they're used for timing, so things stop working rather than exploding. I'm not sure if you can see, probably from that angle you can't. This one up here, this electrolytic cap, that's leaked from the bottom. It didn't pop the top. Let's have a closer look. Rightio. Well, if we look really closely, the board is quite black here. So that means it's been getting very, very hot. This is a 1N4007 diode, which doesn't look great, but I'm not sure that that's going to be a problem. I can measure that. But if you look, I think you can see down here, the underneath of this capacitor here, all the black stuff oozing out of it. That's an electrolytic capacitor that's leaking, but hasn't split the top where it's supposed to. So this could be our main the main source that I'd be looking at for trouble. So I'm going to pull that capacitor out and we're going to have a look at it, but I'd say it's gone if it's leaking like that. I might replace all these capacitors in this power supply. I think what I'll do is remove the power supply from the back of the television. That way I can work on it on its own. Hopefully when that capacitor went, it didn't take out the rest of the circuit from that. There's also a bit of white around here which looks like it's been cleaned with isopropyl alcohol after it's been fixed, or after it's been made, so we'll get on to looking at that. It's all surface mount stuff on this side, so I have to be very careful. Rightio, I'm going to turn my solder station on. That's going to make a bit of noise because I'm going to have the extractor on as well. I hate it when they bend over legs on things. It makes it extremely difficult to get them out. And look at that. Okay, that's an electrolytic capacitor that hasn't cracked the top, but it's gone out the bottom, and so that could be quite corrosive on the board too. So it doesn't look the best. I don't think it's even worth. I don't think it's even worth testing. You can see, actually that cap came off with the broken leg. I thought that was loose. There you go, that's a 200 volt 47 microfarad, and it's specified to 105 degrees. Well, sometimes you get lucky and unlucky at the same time. The electronic supplier that I went to only had one capacitor in stock for any that are suitable for this board. Two capacitors, I guess. This one's a higher voltage, but they're basically the same size. Both 47 microfarad. This is 450 volts, so it's significantly higher voltage, but that's all I could get. And I couldn't get replacements for any of the other capacitors at this time. So I don't know whether that's just a shortage or whatever. So, because this is a height issue, I'm going to have to lay this cap down like these bigger ones are here, because that's about the same sort of size as that. So I'm going to have to lay it down. So what I'll have to do is insulate one of the legs so that it can't possibly interfere with itself. I'm going to put a puddle of hot glue underneath it to keep it off the board and away from anything else it might touch, and then we'll put it through the holes and solder it in. So I'll be doing that, and that's yeah, that's what I have to do next, I guess. And I've just taken some alcohol and brushed the bottom of that off. Anyway, back in that spot. Well, that's annoying. Of course the television doesn't start. Now there's a simple test you can do, and that's to unplug this cable that goes from the power supply to the logic board. And what should happen is, as if the power supply is functioning normally now, you'll get power out of that lead there, and the LED panel will actually, the backlight panel will illuminate, so you'll see the television glow. Now that means that the voltage that's coming back through here isn't being processed by this little chip here, and coming out here is 3.3 volts and then travelling back in and then bringing up the full panel. It's an interesting way that they do it, but that's the way they do it. So if this little guy here is dead, that's a programmable EEPROM, I believe, and I don't have the equipment here on the soldering station to actually remove service mount components, so I'll probably have to look for a logic board as a spare. So anyway, let's do the test and see whether or not the power supply illuminates the actual panel. Oh, there you go, it's lit up straight away. I think you can see that. Yeah, so okay, so I think we have a logic board problem. I will be back in a while. Okay, I was able to pick up another board locally from one that had a smashed display. We'll put that in. These chips you can get from the UK for about, probably landed in Australia, it costs you about $80. I was able to pick up this board a fair bit cheaper than that locally, so let's put it in and see if it works. Yes. While we're here, let's have a really close look at that chip, shall we? Beautiful. Certainly see that the television's working. That's just basically output from my DSLR here, straight in the back. So I'll need to test the antenna and things as well, just to make sure they're working, but I think we can pretty much say that it's fixed given that the power supply was the issue. Rightio, so there you go. Sometimes the obvious thing does get fixed quite easily. That actually wasn't too bad, because quite often switch mode power supply, if a cap's gone, it does take some of the semiconductor components with it, but in this case it didn't on the supply. But that Well-Trends chip has got a reputation of being rather sensitive to power supply failures, and unfortunately it's a bit of a toss of the coin. If the power supply goes, it may or may not take that chip, depending on how lucky you are. So that's about all I've got time for today. Hi to all the new subscribers. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like the content. And stick around, you know what you have to do if you want to get notified of more videos in the future. Until then, you all look after each other, take care and be kind to one another. And we'll see you on the next episode of Tips and Tricks.